Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you're well. Right here, broadcasting live from Washington, D.C. I can see I can actually see the Washington Monument like right outside my window. it's we got a good view here in this hotel, and it's actually quite surprising that we were able to get a hotel room in Washington, D.C. because they just passed their mandates. I believe it was last Saturday. So I think a lot of people here for the march tomorrow or the rally, whatever you want to call it, against the mandates are staying in Virginia or maybe Maryland, something like that. Maybe just coming over on the train or. But let's get into it, and I want to just go through Q&A and go through the chat like I do on the George Gammon channel on Sunday nights, and we'll just go back and forth and have a good old time. But before we do, let's go. I want to check this out. This story from looks like Fox News here, and it's defeat the mandate march coordinator explains why DC event is critical to push back on restrictions. Agreed. This person's name is Will Witt, and I've spoke to some of the organizers. Actually, maybe I did speak with Will. I don't recall. Sorry, Will, if you hear this. If I spoke to you, I apologize. I spoke to 2 or 3 people the other day when I was with Dr. Chris Martz, and I can't recall who it was because they were just on Chris's phone, and I couldn't see them very well, and I'm terrible with names. But one thing that I want to highlight in this article is right here. Well, a couple things. This is Will saying that you're going to hear a lot of people talk about on the left say this is a big anti-vax rally. It's people coming to deny science. And boy, oh boy, he hit the nail on the head. What's interesting is even last week, I couldn't really find much on Google at all. I don't know if they were suppressing the news stories. I'm not sure what was going on there. Now it's all over the news, and we're going to go to one article in particular that illustrates exactly what Will's talking about. I mean, it's just utterly ridiculous. And I think I've got an edge here because I've dealt with the media in the past, and I've been, at the receiving end of a lot of their nonsense. So I know all their tricks and I know their games. And so I can kind of see right through the BS, if you will. But a lot of people can't if they haven't had direct, um, if they haven't dealt with the media directly in this fashion. So I want to point out then another thing here that he points out. Well, first of all, this is a great tweet, a great tweet. And if you haven't seen a lot of these recent charts, I mean, you've got to go through and look at these. And if you feel as though it's appropriate, share them with your friends. You've got France, where they've got the unmedicated ban from society, basically. You've got the mandates, you've got masks indoors, outdoors. You've got these people are banned from public transport. Police are checking the papers. And there's a chart. I just don't see how they can look at this and say, oh, yep, job well done. Whew, awesome. Thank goodness we have those mandates. Boy, oh boy, because if we didn't, we'd be just suffering through this spike, just like Florida and just like Texas and Arizona. If we didn't just impose all of these draconian restrictions on our population and make their lives a living hell. And I'm not just, let's for a moment pause and think about what this does to the people who have the medicine, right? It's not like this makes their life any easier. I mean, we just checked into the hotel this evening, and I felt really sorry for the gal at the front desk. Very delightful young lady. And, when we checked in, she said, well, do you have your medicine? And she wasn't saying it in a way that was authoritarian or just, with a chip on her shoulder or this authority complex, which I've heard a lot of the TSA people. But she's just saying it very politely. And I said, no, unfortunately, no, we don't have that. And she says, oh, okay. Well, I really apologize for having to ask. but it's, it's the local rule. I said, "Oh, no, it's not your fault," And I said, "Well, what happens if you have the medicine?" She's like, "Oh, well, we put a wristband around your wrist so you can get into the hotel bar and the hotel restaurant and there. It's basically so you can leave your room." I'm like, "Wow. Wow. Okay, that's when it really hits you because I've been in Arizona this whole time and in states like Florida and Texas. So life there is pretty close to normal. I mean, you see people wearing masks and whatnot, but you sure as heck don't see that. And that's when it gets real in a hurry when you're dividing the population and basically telling one group that they're not allowed to leave their room. And she then said, she's like, "No, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I even have to ask." And she's like, "Well, since you don't have the wristband, you're not able to go into the restaurant or you're not able to do any of these things." I said, "Yeah, I knew that prior to coming here." And she goes, "Well, you can order room service." And I'm like, "Well, there's that, I guess. Thank you very much. That was the game plan from the beginning." She's like, "Yeah, again, I sincerely apologize." But my point is this gal, uh, I don't know if she had the medicine or not. I'm maybe assuming so. I'm assuming this hotel maybe has the made it mandatory for their employees. But look at the position that you're putting her in. I mean, very pleasant person. She's maybe, I'm sure she's working her way through college or something like that. She's maybe 20 years old. And you just, for what? For what? Really? And we all know that it's for power and control and conditioning and all the things that we talk about on this channel. But if you just look at just the basic facts, just look at this chart for heaven's sakes. And are you? I mean, look at this chart, and you could say, well, if they didn't do these things, then it wouldn't be at 250,000. It would be at 500,000 or something. Okay, well, let's just compare this chart to another area that didn't have any of these restrictions and that had the same type of scariant wave go through. I was listening to someone on YouTube. I wish I could remember his name. He seems like the English version of Chris Martenson almost, Dr. Chris Martenson, and he goes over a lot of the UK data, obviously, and he went over the data for Scotland, Ireland, and then England. And he showed that the restrictions were far less draconian in England, but yet in almost every metric, they had superior results in this last wave. So it's just the useful idiots. I mean, we know why the politicians are doing it. We know why the global elite are doing it. But for all the useful idiots that are just kind of going along with this because they're not doing the research, they're not critically thinking. I just don't see how they're unwilling to do just a simple Google search just to just look at some charts really quick. Just look to see what impact these draconian measures are having instead of just assuming that they quote unquote work. It's staggering. I really feel sorry for those people that are being misled to this degree. I mean, on one hand, I feel sorry for them, and on the other hand, I kind of don't because my goodness gracious, just take it 5 minutes and just Google it really quick. But I also wanted to point out here that this gentleman, Will, I think his name was, he said 90% of the speakers have the medicine. So again, when they and oh, so these are some of the speakers. You guys can see them here. Uh, I'm interested. I mean, I'm really excited to meet all these people. Probably the person I'm most excited to meet is right here, JP Sears. That guy is awesome. He is absolutely awesome. I really really enjoy his videos. So JP, hopefully I get to meet you tomorrow. Love to have you on the Rebel Capitalist show to interview you sometime when you got some time. But I want to point out here's some of the speakers here. I don't see JP in there. Maybe he'll be here. Maybe he won't. Actually, maybe I should just click on this. Maybe there's more people. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, so lots of individuals. I know Chris. I don't think is able to make it, and I don't think Brett is able to make it as well, but a lot of other really cool individuals. A lot of these people I don't know, so that'll be fun to listen to them speak and hear their ideas on what's going on. But getting back to the article, you'll notice up here the first thing that we pointed out where Will was saying that a lot of the people in the media are going to say this is an anti-vax rally, and that you say, well, how can they spin it like that if 90% of the speakers have the medicine? Well, they do. Check this out. So here, going over to quote unquote news from NBC, organized on Facebook, the who's who of anti-medicine. 90%. It's the website is defeat the mandates. It's not defeat the medicine. The whole thing is defeat the mandates. 90% of the speakers have the medicine, yet who's who of anti-medicine. It's just, and see, this doesn't surprise me though, because I've seen the media do this for years, not just with this. I mean, they did this to me countless times prior to retiring, where you sit there and you tell them over and over and over and over and over and over again that this is your position, and yet you read the article and they just completely ignore everything you say, and they just say this is your position, even though you say the complete opposite of that. I mean, it's just par for the course here. So, and then the spin is completely jaw-dropping. The event adds momentum to activists who continue to find ways to spread false and misleading claims about you know what. Now often focusing on mandates as an entry point. This is the gateway drug to the alt-right. I mean, it just gets so ridiculous that even understanding their objectives, I think they're doing far more harm than good. They're pushing people away from even listening to them at all, because it's just getting so absurd that anyone's like, wait a minute here, what are you talking about? Like, I know someone who's anti-man, and this is not them. This is, I'm really surprised they took a shot of people with signs that, and none of them are wearing. I'm really surprised they have a diversity of ethnic groups in here. I'm surprised they have females, and I'm really surprised they have. There's no one in here wearing a Trump hat. I cannot believe that. But so I just wanted to go through here, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because you guys know the drill, you know the routine. But you'll see that again, the whole march is defeat the mandates. That's the whole march. But yet through the entire article, they do exactly what Will was saying. And even one of the people that they spoke with on the record said specifically, this event is an anti-mandate, not anti, you know what? And actually, this is Malone saying that, but I know the organizers, Will and I think a couple other gals, they've just said this over and over and over again. And then you get this person, Kalina, whatever, postdoctorate fellow who researches the anti-medicine movement at University of Washington. I mean, this. I'm assuming it's a lady. This gal's completely lost her mind. Completely, it's like Trump derangement syndrome, but yet 10 times worse here. So she says that these people are a who's who of grifters and people who made profit off the cerveza sickness. Are you kidding me? You think that these, I guess they don't, like this guy, this doctor, you guys know his name? This guy profited from the cerveza sickness? Are you serious? How about the mainstream media and selling fear? How about big pharma? What? I mean, come on. This is the pot calling the kettle black right here, don't you think? It's just staggering that these people can be so obtuse. Wow. And then they go, though the event has been mostly marketed as opposing the mandates. Yes, it's been marketed that way because that's what it is. But see, they keep spinning it as though, oh, it's really not about what they're saying, even though they said it over and 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 over again, even though 90% of the speakers have the medicine. Yeah, well, yeah, fine, whatever. But it's really about what we tell you it's about. I think people, even the typical CNN watcher, it's just getting fed up. They're just getting sick and tired of being treated like a child because that's really what the media is doing. And it's not just the media. It's and here again, I've said they're only against mandate. This is I think one of the gals that was putting this on. So they keep saying this over and over and over again. But then the article keeps going right back to, oh, I don't care what they say. This is just oh, and then get this. As policies have changed on Facebook, we've seen the anti, you know what groups rebrand as pro medical freedom, pro choice. So they're saying that really deep down they are anti medicine. They're just not telling you that because it's a workaround Facebook's rules. I mean, come on. Even though 90% of the speakers have the medicine, it's just you just can't make this stuff up. You really can't. But it's not surprising. It's not surprising. Let me show you something from my Twitter feed here. That's I that's what that is. That I got from my good friend Chris McIntosh. And listen to this gal. Let's go ahead and put this up. And this is a gal, of course, at Davos. Let's not forget that's going on, where she says the World Economic Forum's, uh, oh, this is their Great Narrative Conference. That's awesome. The good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more. That's the good news. What's the bad news? The bad news is that the majority of the people don't trust the elites or trust the elites less. But this, I don't think, was the shocking part. Listen to how this gal says this. Just listen to this for a moment. Just listen to this for a moment here. And this is why I always say these people are central planners. And the core takeaway that you have to understand, and you can see this in the media, it's so apparent from this article that they treat you like you're stupid. They treat you like you're a child. Why? Because they think you are stupid. That's why. They actually believe that you are stupid. And it's so obvious when you hear people like this gal speak. She's sitting there saying that we, the elite, need to come together so we can reshape the world or we can engineer or design the future. We, the what? What? Like we somehow, the average Joe and Jane, all of us, society, the normal people out there, we somehow need to delegate that that I want this gal to design my future. No, 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 no. I don't think so. I'm perfectly capable of designing my own future. Thank you very much. You just worry about you, and I'll worry about me. But that's not their worldview. And it's just so obvious when you hear them speak and hear how they say the things they say. And what's, I guess, refreshing is they're not even trying to hide the fact now. They're not even trying to beat around the bush. They're not even trying to conceal the fact that they consider themselves the global elite. They're coming right out and saying that they are the elite. Listen to this.
A few years ago, the Edelman survey showed us that the good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more. So we can come together and design and do beautiful things together. The bad news is that in every single country they were polling, the majority of people trusted that elite less. So we can lead, but
It's just What else is bizarre too? It's just like this weird dystopia. Look, do you see the crowd?
Showed us
Like, hold on.
that the good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more. So we can come together and design and do beautiful things.
Look at this. Like first of all, I mean, it's not like these people, but look at the background. It's just all like bright white light. Like, doesn't that seem like some sort of bizarre, like futuristic dystopian sci-fi movie? It just seems like something out of the Hunger Games. That's what it always reminds. Whenever I hear people like this gal speak, I just think Hunger Games. But my point there is just to show you further proof that these people are central planners, and I think it's the exact same mindset as the eugenicists in the early 1900s. And I hate to lump them into that category, but it's the same worldview. It's just simply that we are superior to you. We are superior to all the dumb rubes, the average Joes and Janes for XYZ reason. Therefore, we need to have all the power and control to redesign the future the way we see fit, not the way that the average person sees fit for themselves and their family. Oh, no, 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 no. No, they're not smart enough to make those decisions. We need to redesign everyone's future based on what we believe or what is best for us and what we believe to be true. That's really the bottom line. And you can, once you understand this is their worldview, when you read articles like this, it makes a lot more sense because you and I read these articles and say, how can they, like, who is buying that? Like, how can they even talk to people in such a condescending way? And what I mean by that is, how can they just blatantly spin things, and how can they make it so obvious that they're spinning things? And it's because they truly believe that you guys watching this are so stupid that you'll just buy right into it. That's the worldview, and that's why they think that they should be in control of the message, they should be in control of the science, and they should be in control of the global economy. All right. So, on that note, I'm really, really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to be standing up for the principles and values that I hold so dear. And coming in here, I didn't really think about any security issues or anything. I maybe I should have. I don't know. I mean, it just I know the people putting it on. I know some of the speakers, and obviously these are all very level-headed, peaceful people. They're just standing up in a way, not trying to cause a problem, just letting the politicians know, just making their voices heard, that they stand up for freedom, liberty, and the sovereignty of the individual. But I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm very optimistic though. So we'll be live streaming. We'll be asking some questions, maybe doing some interviews. Might have Josh out there filming stuff with Angelique and other people in the Rebel Capitals team. And so just stay tuned for that. Yeah, be mindful of your surroundings. R says, yeah, I didn't even think about that prior to coming here. But when I get here and I read some of the news stories and I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that side of it. I guess because maybe I'm naive in that way. I just assume that if people are peacefully protesting that they'll be left alone, but maybe that's I guess in today's day and age that's me being obtuse to reality. But let's see what we've got for some questions here. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'd like to maybe focus on the freedom and liberty stuff. If we've got oh my god, wow, we got a lot of my goodness, we got a lot of comments. Okay, I try to go to the top there. No, I didn't see the one with David Icke. Yeah, and if you guys are interested in joining us tomorrow, just go to defeatthemandatesdc.com. I believe it starts at the Washington Monument tomorrow at 11:30, and then we just go to the Lincoln Memorial, and then we hear some people speak. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you do come, bring a jacket. It's cold here. I'm not used to this at all. I told Josh and Angelique on the plane that pretty much since 2015, uh, Phoenix is pretty much the coldest place I've been for the last 6 years because I've just been in Florida and St. Bart's and in Arizona and parts of Texas, really. So anyway, just let me question here. Okay, any thoughts on the book Confessions of? Yeah, absolutely. This is something I've talked about extensively with Chris McIntosh. Let me see if I can. There you go. So you guys can read the question. I think this is we see this playing out, and I haven't read the book, but I get the gist of it, and these are the same conclusions that I've come to when I think through the messaging from the IMF, and I think through what's happening right now with emerging market economies, countries, dollar denominated debt, the lack of dollar denominated cash flow, the euro dollar future curve inverting, or I don't know if it's still inverted, but it was inverted out past 2024, 2025, and how that means that we might not see price deflation, but we see an economic slowdown. The economic activity is reduced, economic output is reduced. And if that's the case, then the dollar cash flows go down, but the dollar debt stays the same. You still have those monthly payments. So that could lead to, um, uh, a lot of defaults, and then the defaults lead to a constriction of banks' balance sheets in the Eurodollar system, and you're already dealing with a system that's broken. That's a system that is not functioning on all 8 cylinders, that is far more risk averse than it was prior to the GFC. And if that takes another blow, my goodness, you could see that whole global banking system come crashing down. Not necessarily from a standpoint of bankruptcies with the banks themselves, but although that may happen, but more so with a collapse in dollar liquidity, which would most likely lead to uh, bankruptcies galore with a lot of these global corporations. And we'd have to see what happens in the United States, most likely bailouts, right? In other countries, who knows? But it gets pretty ugly pretty quick there. And so, uh, the whole point is you've got you got less economic activity, and you got less dollar cash flow. So if they're trying to roll over their debt because they can't make the payments, or they're trying to find some sort of lifeline, the IMF has come in and said, okay, well, we'll lend you the dollars if XYZ bank that you've been dealing with in the Cayman Islands, if they won't create those uh, dollar liabilities for them, which would be a increase in the checking deposits, basically extending credit, dollar denominated credit. We'll go in and we'll do that, but this comes with conditions. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. All these hoops that you have to jump through, and I think this is one of the reasons there's been such a the message around what has happened since 2020 has been so consistent from country to country. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but if you think about countries like Colombia instituting a mandate to get into the country for tourism, that is bonkers. That is craziness. That is craziness. You're just crushing your economy to a further degree than you've already crushed it since 2020. Why would you do that? Like, even if there is a health benefit, a perceived health benefit there, that in doing a cost benefit analysis, that the costs far outweigh the benefit. When you're creating even more poverty, when you're creating more sickness, when you're creating more hunger, when you're creating more homelessness, right? More depression. You're doing all of these things by not bringing in those tourist dollars. Just yesterday, we did a couple videos on this mass formation psychosis, but how that could have been created, or the catalyst to that, the mental, the state, the how can I say this? Societies, the what created the mental state that made society susceptible to something such as a mass formation psychosis most likely started on the economic side of the equation. I think that's the best way to say it. And if it starts from an economic standpoint, and that's just because we've been so far under trend with growth in the United States to the point where the Great Depression in the 1930s, as far as the quote unquote recovery from that crash, was far better than the recovery that we have had from the crash during the GFC. So that's a I mean, that statistic in and of itself blows me away. So think about the mental depression that comes from that economic depression, and think about what that does for health. I mean, these are just the unintended consequences are limitless from what these governments are doing. So you have to scratch your head and you say, why? Why? I get it that there's a group of global elite, and that they want to do X, Y, and Z, and they've got this agenda. Yeah, I totally get that. But that makes sense as to why countries like Austria and maybe some of these countries in Africa and so, but 100%, with the exception of Sweden, basically, does the exact same thing in 2020. What, like everyone? That doesn't make sense to me. And but when you look at it through the eyes of the IMF and this book, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, it makes far more sense. And then it gets even more. Um, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but when you look at the IMF trying to prompt Jerome Powell and the Central Bank of the United States to raise interest rates, right? So think that one through. So they've got all of these countries by the short hair, so to speak, and in my opinion, there's a good chance that they set up all of these hoops for these countries to jump through. And this is why they're doing all these things that seem very counterproductive for the long term health of their economy from a standpoint of physical health, but also financial health. And that the IMF has got them doing this because they have loaded up on so much dollar denominated debt. And they know the IMF is the lender of last resort, and they just don't have a choice but to play their game. And then you see the IMF saying, "Oh yeah, Fed, go ahead and raise interest rates." Why would they be doing that? Like, what does the IMF care if the Fed raises rates? Well, think about that. If the Fed raises rates, what does that do to the debt burden for all of these countries and corporations outside the United States that have dollar denominated debt? It increases their debt burden. It makes it harder to manage. If their debt burden is harder to manage, if their ability to roll over their debt is far less likely, if dollar liquidity becomes that much more expensive, then that gives the IMF that much more leverage. Are we to assume that's coincidental? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. So, bottom line, yeah, that's I know not they set it up in a different way. Obviously, they tell a different story, but the conclusions they come to, or the conclusions that you can extract from the book, are pretty much in line with the scenario that I just outlined, which I think, again, I don't have proof. I can't say definitively, hey guys, this is how it works. This is how the system works. I mean, I can do that with quantitative easing. I can do that with the repo market. I can do that with the Fed's balance sheet, the commercial banking system, or trying to explain to you guys how dollars are created in the real economy. All of that is I've got the proof right here. This is how it works. Bam, 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 bam. Here are the balance sheets. Here's what's happening. But with this, I can't. Why? Because it's me trying to get into people's heads, and who knows what's going on in their head. All I can do is listen to what they say and just use my not just common sense, but my ability to read people. And if any of you have been an entrepreneur, which I'm sure a lot of you on this live stream have, you know that one of the and you have to learn this to be a successful entrepreneur. You got to learn how to read people very, very quickly. And it's something you can learn, but the more experience you have, the better you get. And I was an entrepreneur for so long, and I literally worked with thousands of employees, not at the same time. The biggest business I had a little over 100 employees. But over the years, I worked with thousands of employees, thousands of vendors, thousands of subcontractors and whatnot. I met with thousands of customers, you name it. And when you interact with that many people, you really start to hone your spidey senses as far as just meeting someone in 1 or 2 minutes, talking to them, just kind of reading their expressions, eye contact, the handshake, the tonality of their voice, how they're saying things, what they're saying. You guys know what I'm talking about. You can get the sense very quickly if this is someone that you would trust, or is this a used car salesman I'm dealing with here? And so that's all I've got to go on. And then, of course, what they say, going to the World Economic Forum's website, reading everything. I've shared my views there. You guys have, I'm sure, done the same thing. And this is how I come to these conclusions. The one thing we know definitively is they're central planners. The one thing we know definitively is that they believe they are better than everyone else, and they should have the power and the control and the authority to build the world and the global economy the way they see fit, and it's our role to obey. And if we don't obey, then I think they believe they should be justified to put us in our place using any means necessary. And if you listen in this public-private partnership as an example, this is corporatism, right? This is not disputable. This is what they want. And then if you just think through, well, what's the end game with corporatism? Let's take that to its logical conclusion. You do that with everything, and it leads to these people having all the power and all the control over the production of goods and services at a global level. So you sit there and say, well, maybe it's not intentional. Okay, well, whether it's intentional or not, if they are able to achieve their objectives in the way they want to achieve them, then the net result is still the same. So then you kind of work backwards and say, well, are they too stupid to know that that's the end game, or are they crazy like a fox and they know that's the end game? And then you start to read their mannerisms, and you start to again use those spidey senses. And I think that at least when I do that, I come to the conclusion that these people aren't that sophisticated, but their objective is to really, I don't want to say rule the world. Their objective is for them to be in control of the policies for that are implemented for societies across the globe. And they want to control the economy. They want to control the means of production. And that's my base case. So now, again, no certainties, only probabilities. You guys need to come to those conclusions on your own. But anyway, we got to pay attention to not only the World Economic Forum, but the IMF. And great question, Angela. I know I got off on a tangent there, but it's a great observation. What is the energy like here? It's like a ghost town. I mean, it's bizarre. It's just weird. I mean, we're staying in a huge hotel, and again, I'm used to Arizona. Like, let me give you an example. I mean, the hotel where we stayed in Houston for Rebel Capitalists Live, you just go into the lobby, and it's like a normal hotel, what you would expect. There's a lot of kind of hustle and bustle, and the valet guys out there, and the guys getting your bags and taking them up to the room and walking you over to uh, the check-in booth there, what do they call it? Registration. And then they've got they got the bar right when you walk in. They got the sports on, people in there drinking and kind of laughing and mixing it up, and people kind of walking back and forth. I mean, just like a big hotel lobby, like you would expect at a big Hilton, like we were at the in Houston. And this is what I've seen at the last collective event that we did in Phoenix. We did it at the Monticello, if I'm pronouncing that right. And it's kind of this high-end swanky place in Scottsdale. And same type of thing. You go in there and it's just hustle and bustle. It's just what you'd expect. We came into this hotel this evening, and it was maybe 4:30 local time afternoon, and this is a huge hotel, and I think we were the only ones in the lobby, literally, and the lobby is huge. It looks like a giant, like, museum or something. I mean, the lobby is giant. It was just us. That's it. Just weird. It's like one of those, what was the sci-fi movie with Will Smith where, was that Independence Day? Well, I can't remember what it was, but or iRobot or something like that, where, he's walking through New York City and it's a ghost town. There's, like, no one. That's what it feels like here. Like, even when we were coming over in the cab, I was noticing there's really no one out on the street. Now, that said, it is 25, 30 degrees, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. But, that wouldn't explain what's going on in the lobby of the hotel. Um, I don't know. It's just weird, man. It's just weird, and I don't the more I think of it, Mitchell, through the lens of what we were talking about yesterday and what Jeff Snyder and Emil Kalinowski were talking about on how this economic depression has led to, or has been the catalyst, has created an environment where society is mentally receptive to this hypnosis, for lack of a better term, because they're psychologically depressed because we have been in an economic depression for so long. I mean, if you look at those statistics that Emil and Jeff went over with the suicide rates, the drug use, the the uh, the average life expectancy going down in the United States, like what? What is that all about? I mean, even when I was in high school, I remember late 80s, early 90s when I was in high school, um, you just always assumed that the average life expectancy would get higher and higher and higher. Like that was just, yeah. I mean, it's technology, medicine's getting better. Yeah, of course, people are always going to just live longer. I never, ever, ever thought I would see the average life expectancy in the United States, for heaven's sakes, go down. Like that's crazy, crazy, crazy. And then you look at the birth rate, that's plummeted since the GFC. And and if it's not down in a lot of the Western the Western economies, it's far beneath trend. And that's what happens when people are psychologically depressed. And so I just see that so much, and it's just on the plane, and it's just I don't know, maybe I just sense it more because I'm looking for it. Maybe that has something to do with it. But Our society is far, far, far different than, just going through the security today in Phoenix, getting on the plane, we're going through TSA, and I remember the line was, rather long, and you got everyone in line there that's just quiet, they're not talking, they're not communicating, and all of them have a mask over their face. So no one can see any facial expressions, and I'm sure you guys have noticed that. Like, I try to be overly like, before the cerveza sickness, I would be polite and nice to people, but I wouldn't go out of my way to just, smile and laugh and because I was always in my head kinda just thinking about stuff. But now I make a conscious effort to, say, "Hi, how are" and smile when I can. But you notice that all the people are wearing and it's like they're just checked out mentally, emotionally. They're like zombies. They're just drones. They're just coasting through life, like they're not even, like, present up here. And so I'm looking at all these people in line seeing this, and it's just so weird. And then the TSA person who was checking the IDs or whatever, the guy was literally screaming at people, like you would expect a drill sergeant to scream at people. Just, "Get in line! Go over here! Go to left, 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 left! Now, 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 now!" And if you're just, like, 1 second late to come out of line and show me your ID, "Let's go, let's go!" I mean, just screaming and yelling and giving these orders, and you're like, Dude, chill the fuck out, bro. Chill the fuck out right now." And I hate to use profanity, I apologize for the kids on the live stream here, but that's I think about what my father would have said to that person, and he would have put that guy in line. Like, "Dude, that is not okay. I am not your soldier. I'm not your kid. I'm not the person that you can verbally abuse at will. That's not me. That might be someone else, not this guy. And I will not allow people to speak to me in that fashion, especially people where I am quite literally paying their salary." I mean, most of you on this live stream remember back to the time in the United States when you walked through an airport and you were actually treated as a customer because that's what you are. You're a customer. At what point did we move into this parallel universe where the customer, the people giving the airline their money or paying the tax dollars to the TSA, at what point did they become the official whipping boy? That I'm not only giving you my money, but then I'm paying you so you can verbally abuse me. Like, how did we get to this place? So you see this guy that's just screaming and just like again, like he's not just a drill sergeant, but just the biggest asshole drill sergeant. Like, "Get over here now! Get to the left now! You know, you're too far to the left. You're too far to the right. Get over here now, 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 now!" And I'm not exaggerating. And then you hear this, and then you look at everyone in line, and just not a word, and they're just masks all over their face with just a blank stare in their eyes, just blank, just like they've been hypnotized. And the only movement you ever see is just them briefly looking down at their phones or something, right? To get that dopamine hit from Facebook or Twitter for Instagram. So that's what the energy's like. And I don't, again, you go back to what the economic depression, the psychological depression, the mass formation psychosis, the hypnosis. And you try to sift through all this stuff to try to come to some conclusion to make sense of it. And then, on the plane, I'm watching a documentary on Formula One racing in the 1950s. And specifically, they are tracking what Ferrari was doing. And you see these not only the drivers would go out there. I mean, at the like every race, at least one driver would die. I might be exaggerating, but through the 1950s, I think 40 of them or 39 of them died. What? And then you say, "Oh, well, it's just the drivers being crazy." No, it's the crowd. The crowd. They would go right out there and line the raceway, and sometimes the cars would crash, roll over, and pieces of them would fly out into the crowd and kill, like, 10 people. And then you go to the next race, and the people are right back there. And you're like, how could this and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, or that's not crazy, but it's like, how could this group of people that lived and did this in the 1950s be a part of the same political system and be and live and operate in the same countries? And how are we living today descendants of these people? Like, I try to imagine the cerveza sickness happening during the 1950s with these people that are not only driving Formula One cars with barely a helmet on and no seatbelt, like nothing, because they if they crashed, they wanted to fly out of the car because it was like a 1% chance you might live instead of a 0% chance. And prior to the race, they're sitting there smoking. They're, like, smoking, they're, like like, taking a shot of whiskey, and then they're getting in their Formula One car where there's a 20% probability that they're gonna die by the end of the year. Like, and again, I'm not saying that that's sane, but my goodness, you wanna talk about prioritizing freedom over safety. Jeez. That is really it's like, how did we go from that to where we are today? And what if you would have had the cerveza sickness back then? Like, you think these people would have done what we're doing? You think they would have locked people in a cage for a year? Just think about what they're doing right now in Australia, or even think about what they did in the United States in 2020, or what they probably did in your area. Maybe they're still doing that in your area based on where you are in the world watching this. And try to imagine governments doing that to those people or the people in NASCAR, as an example, during the 1950s. I mean, good luck with that. And then just contrast and compare Formula One today with it's just woke, like it's just a fake woke version. It's not even a woke version. It's so far removed. It's not even the same sport. It's just like a weird dystopian woke, uh, just lame, totally lame version. It's like a hollow version of what they did in the 1950s. It's like if you take all the spirit and the glamour and the excitement, and I'm not even talking about the crashes and whatnot. You just take all the glamour, the excitement. If you take everything that made Formula One fantastic and you just remove that to where it's just a plastic hollow shell of wokeness, that's Formula One now. It's like, how can you go from that to where we are today? Like what psychological components happened? And that's when I think you have to go back to the fourth turning and look at Neil Howe's analysis and his research that shows how you go from generation to generation to generation. And it's just these cycles over and over and over again, where you start with a generation with strong men. And I'm not using men, I'm using that for humanity. and then they just get weaker and weaker and weaker until bam, the whole system starts all over again. And I hate to pick on the young kids of today, and I know that every generation does this, but if you look at the fourth turning, in a way, it's kind of true. That every generation kind of gets weaker and prioritizes safety to a more significant degree. And I mean, I see that even today when you're, I don't, where was I the other, I was somewhere where a lot of people were riding bicycles. I can't remember if I was. Oh, that's right. I was out watching the disc golf tournament in Phoenix, and it was at this park where a lot of people riding around on bicycles, and every single person is wearing a helmet. And of course they're riding their bicycle at about what, 3 miles per hour, something like that. I mean, when did this become a thing? Like, you're riding a bike, dude. You're not riding a motorcycle, and you're not only that, you're riding a bicycle 3 miles per hour. At what and so let me ask you this. You say, "Well, you can crash, you can do all these things at 3 miles per hour?" Really? But why don't at what point in the future are people just gonna wear helmets while jogging? Because you know it's gonna come to that. If we keep going on this same trajectory and valuing safety to the degree that we do, to where it sucks everything else that makes life worth living. It just sucks it all away and just gets rid of it to where it doesn't exist anymore, to where life in and of itself is just hollow, and it just you're alive, but you're not living. I think that's the energy that I see all around me, not only in Washington, DC, but all over the world today. And, you know, at what point do people start wearing helmets while jogging? Well, if you're going to wear a helmet while jogging, why not wear one walking? Why not wear one at work? Who knows? I mean, I could be here in this hotel room and I could have I mean, a piece of the ceiling could fall on my head. I could somehow fall out of my chair and hit this light on my head. I better be wearing a helmet. You can't be too safe. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous. But those of you who grew up in the 70s and the 80s like I did, if I would have said the same thing about wearing a bike helmet, you would have had the same opinion as me proposing that in the future people will be wearing helmets while jogging or walking. And so if you look at this through an economic lens, which I always do, you have to ask yourself, are those people that are going to be wearing helmets while walking, by definition, they are afraid to take risk, any risk. They're like Bubble Boy. Remember that movie? And so are the Bubble Boys that are double fisting their soy products and eating crickets like Klaus Schwab tells them, by definition, they want to take as little risk as possible. Well, what is starting a business? That's taking risk. That's taking huge risk. So if they're not starting businesses, if they're just living in the betaverse, then does that mean we're going to have more goods and services in the future or less goods and services? Now, we might have some services in the betaverse, but I'm talking about in the real world, in reality. That means we are going to have fewer goods and services. That means less economic output. Less economic output means more economic depression, which means more psychological depression, which takes us right back to this mass formation psychosis hypnosis, and it's just a feedback loop. So that's my thoughts on the energy. Angela, happy birthday to you, and happy birthday to one of our rock star editors, Thomas. I don't know how old he is today, but today is his birthday. He's down celebrating in Medellin, Colombia. I'm looking forward to seeing him soon. So you share your Birthday with an awesome, awesome dude. Okay, Mitchell, looks like you got some great questions, buddy, but I'm going to try to answer some questions for some other people here to kind of spread the love. Yeah, so question, what does the Fed actually do? Snyder thinks they act through psychology. I agree. I agree. I don't think they really do anything. Arguably, they kind of control the short end of the curve through IOR. I think it's all psychological. I mean, even if you look at the corporate debt they bought during March of 2020, I was talking to Joseph Wang about this at Rebel Capitalist Live, and he pointed out something I didn't even realize. They only bought $1 billion worth of junk debt through the special purpose vehicle. Only $1 billion. And that's all it took. Because just the market knowing that the Fed bought $1, they extrapolate that into the future. And they read that to mean that in the future, Fed will do whatever it takes to prop up the corporate debt market or to prop up the junk debt market. Therefore, let's just go in there and load up on junk debt because we know the Fed has our back. See, this is all going on in the minds of the market participants, even if the Fed wasn't planning on doing that. This is how this is the world that I don't want to say they're perceiving it to be. This is how they are projecting what they believe to be true into the future and then making bets on it. And the Fed doesn't have to do anything. They all they have to do is imply that they're going to do something. And for some reason, the market takes them at their word. And then the market basically does the bidding for them. The Fed doesn't have to buy the bonds. The market does it for them. They're just like the puppeteer. You know what they're really like? They're like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz, or the dude that's just behind the curtain, right? I mean, my God, everyone thinks it's a scary thing. Oh my gosh, he's controlling this and controlling this. And I guess in a way he kind of was, more so than the Fed. But you pull back the curtain, and it's just like, what? That's the powerful Fed? And you start to realize that they're not powerful. The only thing they can do is create bank reserves, for heaven's sakes. I mean, think about it. That's all they can do. All they can do is create. How do they pay IOR? You say, oh, George, they can control interest rates. How do they do that? How do they pay IOR? Printing bank reserves. How did they buy the corporate debt? Printing bank reserves. That's all they can do. That's it. Quantitative easing. Create bank reserves. That's it. That's their toolbox. And yet, for some reason, we think that just having the ability to do that can make asset prices go up, can make the long end of the bond curve go down, can do all of these things. It can, my goodness, if you listen to the politicians now, oh my gosh, the Fed has the power to lower the unemployment rate. They've got the power to solve global warming. They've got the power to cure cancer. They've got the power to eradicate inequality. They've got the power to, um, you know, uh, increase the uh, the lot of the disadvantaged groups in the United States, or to improve the standard of living, I should say, of the disadvantaged groups in the United States. They can do all this stuff if they want to. Really? By just printing bank reserves? And they're not even printing bank reserves. I mean, when you really think about it, all they're doing is just typing in digits to an account. It's electron. It's a scoreboard. That's all it is. It's a scoreboard. And then you say, well, George, well, they're getting those bank reserves. So what? the banks have to sell them something. It's not like they get the bank reserves for free. They get the bank reserves, the banks, by giving the Fed an asset that is arguably better than a bank reserve. So, I mean, there's a great argument for QE even making things worse. As far, but it's just you're looking at a cross current. QE most likely makes things worse as far as liquidity, ironically enough. But it's just that cross current gets completely overwhelmed by the cross current of everyone believing the Wizard of Oz is real. I mean, it's just so yeah, that's what the Fed does. It's psychological expectations policy. And just like the United States dollar, or just like any fiat currency, it's only as good as the level of confidence that the market participants have in the entity itself. And once the confidence is gone, the whole thing collapses. If the inflation if inflation really is transitory and Fed backs off making any hikes and keeps current accommodation, how will that affect the stock market? Well, I mean, let's go back to March of 2020, Eric, and the Fed wasn't really dealing with an inflation problem back then, at least not headline CPI. And we were in a disinflator. They kept trying to get us up to that 2% target rate, as if they can do that. And then the Fed came out on that Sunday. Remember, they had the emergency meeting. They were supposed to meet on a Wednesday, and the market was absolutely crashing. And they said, okay, we're going to drop rates down to zero, and we're going to do QE infinity, and we're going to commit to $1 trillion a day in repo. And what did the market do the next day? Did they say, oh my gosh, the Fed is going to do all this QE? This is great. This is the Fed put. Did the market boom? No, the market tanked. The Fed put had expired. So what made the market go back up? It was the government put. Go back, read the newspaper headlines. Just look at the timeline. I've done it many, many, many times. Done it in whiteboard videos. Most of you guys know that. When the market started to quote unquote recover and go back up, it was once they announced the CARES Act. So we went from a Fed put to a government put. So I don't know that let's see if inflation, yeah, if Fed backs off. I don't know if this is a Fed centric question. I understand the answer you're trying to get, but I don't know that you should start by asking the question about the Fed. I think maybe it would be better if you asked the question about government deficit spending. And I get it. That has to be monetized by the Fed, or else there's not additional dollars that are being created on non-bank entities' balance sheets. Totally get it. But my guess is, it takes two to tango there. And I think the Fed just coming in and doing quantitative easing in and of itself may or may not have the psychological impact on the market that it's had before. And like I've said so many times over the past couple of years, if you want to get economic answers, you've got to start by answering political questions, not economic questions. Does a stock market crash change policy on mandates? Now that's a good question. I definitely I definitely don't think the mandates would be more draconian or get more draconian. I don't think we would see additional mandates, that's for sure. Because if that stock market crashes, people are going to be panicking to a substantial degree. I mean, that's an understatement. And the mandates and the cerveza sickness, that's going to be the last thing on their mind. The first thing on their mind is going to be, holy cow, my portfolio has been, or my life savings that I need to live on for the rest of my life because I've quit my job, I've retired early, and I'm not planning on going to back. Uh, I now have half of what I did 2 weeks ago. You think that person's going to be caring about the cerveza sickness? I don't think so. No way. And I get it. There's not a majority of the people that own assets, but indirectly they do because their pension funds own assets, and and then their home equity. I mean, but home equity takes a long time to go down. But if that starts to sputter, and especially if we got a disorderly stock market decline, crash, collapse, whatever you want to call it, I just think the attention goes straight to that, and people still remember the racist sickness. They're still a little worried about it, but let's. I'm not going to focus on that now. Let's focus on me losing half my life savings. So I don't think I think that would be definitely a headwind to the mandates. All right, guys, I'll take another couple questions here. Then I've got to meet with Angelique and Josh about kind of a game plan for tomorrow. And if you're out here, just make sure you say hi. I'd love to interview you for the Rebel Capitalist channel. We might be live. We haven't really figured it out, but I'll definitely be wearing a ski jacket tomorrow and some gloves. But I'm going to try to wear this End the Fed hat just so people know it's me. And so if you see a tall guy, that's one good thing. I'm 6'4", so I definitely stand out in a crowd. So if you see me out there, kind of head and shoulders above the rest, and wearing an End the Fed hat, definitely come up and say hi, and maybe we can get you to answer some questions for the Rebel Capitalist channel. All right, guys, just bear with me. I'm just trying to find another question. Lots of lots of comments. Thank you very much for the engagement. I really appreciate it, guys. There is a lot of engagement because I still can't find a question. Let's play a game. Let's see how long it takes me to find a question. I'm scrolling down. I swear I am. I think you guys have more fun going back and forth on the chat than you do actually listening to me rant. And I'm totally fine with that. Oh, here we go. Finally, there we go. What is the? Oh no, it's the same question. Oh, what does the Fed actually do? It's the same question. Oh, here we go. Here's one that I think everyone's interested in, housing market question. What about mark to market in housing after housing bubble pop? Mark to market in housing? Yeah, you mean mortgage-backed securities? Yeah, I mean that. I'm assuming you're talking about mortgage-backed securities and the change in the mark to market rules there. Yeah, I think that if I haven't looked at actually what the rules are today, assuming that the changes they made after the GFC are still in effect, then that would make the probability of a GFC type of event less likely in the future, because that's all that a bank is. It's just accounting rules. Like if you want to kind of blow your mind this evening, if you're having a couple stiff drinks, uh, just ask yourself why banks need assets. Why? At the end of the day, all a bank is it's just they're scorekeepers at a basketball game. And so and the scores that they have are just your deposit accounts or their liabilities, their dollar liabilities, and they can, just like a scorekeeper can increase a score from 100 to 102 or 110 or whatever, they can increase the score of a specific bank account. When they do that, they're creating dollars. But why do they need assets to do that? I don't care how hard you rack your brain. The conclusion that you will always come to, now, unless we have cash. See, cash constrains them slightly. But if we live in if they ban cash, we'll use that as a stipulation. Then why do they need assets? No matter, you can draw it out on a whiteboard, get out your legal pad, go through different scenarios. The answer is they don't. They absolutely don't. The only reason they need it is because of accounting rules. That's it. So all you have to do is just change the accounting rules, and it's not possible for a bank to go bust, especially when you consider the fact that banks can create assets, dollar assets, and they can create dollar liabilities. So then it just becomes a matter of the banks agree that these are the rules. If yes, okay, then if by these rules they say that you are bust, then you're bust. But what if the banks just say, oh, well, let's just change the rules? Then all of a sudden you're not bust. Again, you got to look at them like scorekeepers. So do scorekeepers need assets to keep score of a basketball game? No, nor do banks. So that's why these accounting rules are so darn important, because that's the only thing that's holding up the system. And then to take it a step further, the only thing that's holding up that system is confidence. And to take it a step further, that's the only thing that underpins the entire global economy. So, on that note, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Always stand up for liberty, freedom, free market capitalism, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow out at the marches. If not,